Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to a rainy day here in Mumbai. Welcome to this LinkedIn Live session coming to you from the offices of CFA Institute in Mumbai. My name is Nick Pollard. I'm the Managing Director of Asia Pacific for CFA Institute.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome everyone from whichever part of the world you are in to this live session on LinkedIn hosted at the CFA Institute office in India. My name is Anil Ghelani. As a part of my day job, I work with DSP Mutual Fund as head of passive investments and products, and in volunteer capacity, I am associated with the CFA Society India. Wish you a warm welcome.
I'm delighted to say we have over 1,200 people who've registered for this session, 60% of whom come from outside India, so truly a global audience. And the way we're going to organize the next 60 minutes is Anil and I are going to talk about what we see happening in the industry today, what we think might happen in the industry tomorrow, and perhaps set up the next session, which will all be about how do we respond to that in terms of supporting people who are making their careers in investment management. What are the educational challenges that puts to people who are trying to find their way through that career path? And also, how do organizations, how do employers react to these challenges as we move forward? Anil, we're at a time in the industry when I think there's never been more change than there is now. Change is brought upon by technology, changes by the environment, changes by working from home, all sorts of different aspects that are affecting people's lives. What is it that you see as a practitioner as your biggest challenges within the industry today?
I think you made a very good point, Nick, that we are in the midst of a very unique change. In my view, what we have seen in this past couple of years is that the cycles that we see in the markets, or the way in which an investment professional is analyzing the drivers of risk and return, that is changing very fast and very dynamically. Now, if I look back and try to see history, we need to be in a position to learn from how history has behaved in the past and be prepared for that for future. So as a finance professional, as an investment management professional, we need to be able to capture that kind of learnings and incorporate that, distill that in bite-sized information pieces which can be utilized for our investment decision making. So I think the big change is the speed with which it is changing, the speed with which cycles are evolving, and connected to that, the way in which we need to analyze that data and put it into use to implement in live situation. That I feel is a very important change which we all need to recognize and work around.
And how do you think from an employment perspective, organizations are responding to the challenges that gives in terms of skills required? I mean, I'd probably call myself a veteran. You look much younger than me, so you're not a veteran. But we've also grown up in an environment where we're not used to this kind of pace of change. We're not used to this kind of technology impact. How do you see it from your firm's perspective about getting hold of the right kind of talent?
See, the dynamic challenges which investment professionals are facing, similar challenges are to be handled by the firm, basically investment firms. So, like I'll give example, like at my company, we are investing heavily into technology. We are investing into tools and platform which can help investment decision making to be done in a much more holistic manner. So I'll give example of how this kind of data can be used for investment decision making and collaborative learning from current trends in the markets and what history has shown in the past. So today, if suppose there is a history that when in the past markets have traded at the current valuation levels, how it has subsequently performed and how different sectors have behaved, that kind of a learning needs to be incorporated and put to work in the coming next decision making. So companies are investing heavily into technology. Companies are investing heavily into the people who can understand and decode that technology and put it to the best use. For that, we as investment professionals need to ensure we upskill ourselves, like you mentioned. Definitely, we, like I also belong, like I finished my CFA program sometime in 2006, 2005, 2006. So we all need to constantly upskill ourselves to be able to work in the current dynamically changing environment. We need to adapt to technology in the best possible manner, and all firms basically, whether we look at firms in India, similarly firms in global markets, like till very recently I was working in the company in India which was a joint venture presence of one of the largest global asset management firms. So I know for a fact how globally also investment firms, whether you are based out of APAC region in Hong Kong or you are based in SFO, how serious effort is being made in upskilling the human capital or our team members. So small things like, let's say, organization is encouraging study of different areas, not just, let's say, the CFA program, but further upskilling beyond, let's say, this kind of work. Like we are having from next week onwards some training which is being done for AI, ML and big data, how to use it in our daily life. So these are the small developments which organizations are doing to ensure investment professionals are up to date and current.
Yeah, and I think that kind of relevance of your own personal skills, but relevance of the education that you use to upskill yourself becomes extremely important. And certainly from a CFA Institute perspective, we spend an awful lot of time in the industry talking to practitioners about what they see as important today, but also what they think is coming down the line. And in the last couple of years, I'd say they sort of fall into two buckets. One around technology, artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, data science. And certainly we've been growing our portfolio of products in that context over the last couple of years. But also in the environment space, ESG, climate, sustainability. And when I talk to young people in the industry, their interest in both those areas is growing exponentially. And so we ourselves as an institute have had to respond to that demand, helping prepare them for the world of work, but also helping prepare talent for the industry at large. And if there's been a big challenge, it's been in that the difference, if you like, between supply and demand. A couple of years ago, we did a piece of work with LinkedIn, actually, where we looked at the number of people who called themselves investment professionals in one way or another in their LinkedIn profiles, and the number of people who had any kind of environmental ESG type training. And the gap was enormous. In fact, there was only 1% of people in LinkedIn who said they'd had any kind of training in that ESG space. Now that's changed, and I'm thrilled to say we have our own certificate of ESG investing, which has become one of the market leaders in that specific areas. But there's still a massive difference between supply and demand. And I wonder whether you find that in your own firm.
Yes, Nick, definitely. So since you spoke about ESG and converting that in investment management field, in India, we have a very vast majority of asset managers, asset owners who are now gradually aligning to this particular framework of incorporating ESG as a part of the investment analysis. But if I just go back few years, basically, very few were doing that. So I believe that as companies adapt that, like today, we as a firm, we are signatories to the UNPRI, United Nations Principles of Responsible Investing. Like that, many others are gradually aligning to UNPRI. We need to have more and more people who are able to understand not ESG from the perspective of just some number or some data, but who are able to understand that from actual business perspective and distill and collaborate that with the investment decision making or investment thinking. Like today, classic form of investment process would be we look at top-down views on some sectors and then bottom-up on some companies. That does not work anymore. You need to have one more layer of looking at things from ESG lens. So today, in most global markets, regulators started with mandatory reporting by companies. But now in most global markets, it has become, in fact, on their own, companies are reporting much more level of data, much more information, which will help asset owners and investors and analysts to ensure the businesses are being run in line with this ESG or the sustainability in general with their social responsibility being met. But yes, the demand supply is significant. just as a context, like you mentioned, the ESG certification by CFA Institute has recently started getting popular. But like 2 years back, 3 years back, when we are looking for talent in local markets, for example, in India, to hire somebody who can be, leading our ESG analytics, it was very challenging, to even get people who could relate to this kind of a understanding. So yes, it is very much the need of the hour for this demand supply gap. And with that, I mean, I'm very curious, and I would like to put one question to you, Nick, that like I mentioned, we faced a little bit of a not challenging time, but it took time to identify good resource who could understand ESG. But how are you seeing this in global markets, like this situation whereby people focused on ESG or ancillary skill sets? I mean, is it something which is growing as well in some global markets that you are seeing?
We think it's growing enormously, Anil, and we're having to grow with it and change what we do. You mentioned you cleared your CFA in 2006. If you were to look at the curriculum today, you'd see an enormous change.
Certainly.
As it grows with in terms of its relevance. And ESG has been one of those growing areas. So not only do we have standalone certificates, but we also have more ESG content within the curriculum itself. And that's all based on the feedback that we get from the industry, from people like you, frankly, about what you need in terms of the training and development and education of the people that we're providing in terms of supplying talent. But one of the bits of feedback we get, if we put ESG and big data and machine learning to one side, is that particularly in a country like India, which has a very young population, a very smart population, hard-working, they can clear levels 1, 2, and 3 quite quickly. But they haven't had any experience in the world of work. And I wonder, as an employer, whether that is a challenge for you. What we're thinking from a response perspective is that providing, in addition to the technical training that we give people, the technical education that we provide, whether we need to be in that space where we're helping people with softer skills around communication, relationship building, how you work in a team, those things that you get from experience that often some of our candidates just don't have that experience in the world of work.
No, absolutely right. That's a very, very true. And I've been facing that over the years. Very often, while we are evaluating two candidates, always the preference is that, okay, if everything else being same and one candidate has the CFA charter or CFA L1, L2, L3 as a part of their profile, one tends to lay a lot of weightage on their knowledge enhancement. But yes, the certain skill sets of soft skills or industry type of learnings is definitely relatively low right now. I would not say not there, definitely it's there. I mean, we have a very sharp set of young professionals, but if we can enhance that in some way, definitely it will be very powerful. I would like to urge young professionals who are listening to us today that even though if it is not part of the basic curriculum, of the CFA program, CFA program is an excellent body of content of knowledge, but maybe this kind of soft skills and all is not relevant and not currently included. But I urge all of you, I request you to try and ensure it is part of your overall ecosystem. So along with your this preparation and learning and knowledge enhancement of the CFA program L1, L2, L3, you ensure you take the initiative, use this kind of templates or forums like LinkedIn or other such platforms. Young professionals, very often, many of you might be very much more, attached with, like, let's say, just the learning, but always try to focus on this aspect also. It will result in much more a better outcome for you, basically.
No, I completely agree. And always encouraging young people in particular, try and experience or get different experiences from life. Can you join committees if you're at a university? Can you join or help run your sports team and things like that? Things that give you a broader experience, but also experience in working with other people.
And I'll interrupt just one second to continue this part. we as a, like as I mentioned, I'm in volunteer capacity associated with the CFA Society India. So on CFA Society India platform as well, many people don't know yet, but as soon as you finish L1, of course it is there for all societies world over. After finishing level 1, you are eligible and you are welcome to become a member. That itself is one of the excellent platform for networking, for soft skills, for connectivity and further knowledge enhancement. So just wanted to highlight that part basically.
And he'll speak from personal experience. He was a board member, very active board member of CFA Society India, and we've been very grateful for your support along the way, Anil. I was at a Charter Awards ceremony a few weeks back in Beijing, and we have lots of candidates and lots of members in Beijing. And one of the questions we were asked was, do you think it was worth my investment in this credential, given the rise of robots, machine technology, ChatGPT? And I wonder, from your own perspective, particularly given your involvement both as a charter holder and in the industry, how you see that. Is it a threat, or is it something that's actually going to give our ability to serve our customers even better than before?
No, most certainly I think it's, I don't look at it as a threat. See, it's like what we call as, you need the skill set to drive the utility that you have. So let's say certain utility like chatbots or ChatGPT, you need to be able to understand what to ask them, and how to harness that power. And the CFA curriculum and the CFA program gives you that solid platform of knowledge which will be enabling you to do that. So most certainly I think one should not look at these as a threat, but as a complementary skill set, which you need to learn and align to, which will help you to further upskill yourself. And most certainly, Nick, even we face this question often that should I invest my time as well as money, both, for the CFA program 3 levels and XYZ amount in dollar term, in rupee term. I think it's definitely encouraged, worthwhile that, because for that much you get much more out of it, basically, the knowledge, the learning, and it becomes a global passport. Whichever country, like you gave example of Beijing, I am giving example of, let's say you are sitting in Singapore or you're sitting in Canada. From India, there are so many young professional friends who are aspiring to transition to other countries like Canada, because I gave as the example, or to Hong Kong, Singapore. And the CFA program becomes like a quote-unquote global passport, basically. So I definitely feel it's worthwhile every rupee or every dollar or every yuan of the investment, and the investment of your time and effort, basically.
Well, I'm very glad you said that. Right answer, by the way. And I think one of the things that has always resonated with me is that whether you study in Bangalore, Brisbane, Birmingham, you go through the same process, the same curriculum. You abide to the same code of conduct. You learn about ethics in exactly the same way. And as charter holders around the world want to work on a global basis, there's nothing better than knowing that you're talking to someone who has a shared learning experience and a shared code of conduct that they're following. It just makes that, that first conversation that much easier.
Perfect.
I know that we're coming slowly to the end of this section, and thank you all of you who've sent in questions. Very helpful. I wonder, from your own personal experience, what difference do you think being a CFA, being a charter holder, has made to your career?
So my career started with working in the auditing and assurance business. From there, I decided to shift to asset management or investment management. And at that point of time, I realized that the knowledge and skill sets that I have need to be enhanced. So CFA program and the learnings which I got across L1, L2 and L3 were a very powerful platform which helped me to do this career pivot. So today, the understanding that the CFA program provides to a candidate or to a professional who is not from investment background, or sometimes not even from, let's say, commerce background. I know so many charter holder friends who are from let's say biology background. I have colleagues, some friends in the industry, but the CFA programs has the capability to bring you at par with everybody else in the investment world. So I feel that it has worked really very well for me as an individual, as a professional, and both the learning with the CFA program and the ongoing learning as a part of a member of CFA Institute and CFA Society India. Like you mentioned that okay, 2006 and curriculum has changed very much, but yes, as a responsible member, I do it every year. Like there is the member refresher course which comes out. I go through that religiously. I'm sure all members and friends and community in the community are doing it. So it ensures there is a ongoing learning and knowledge enhancement. That is the beauty of it, basically.
A few weeks ago, we celebrated our 60th birthday of the CFA program. 274 people, I think, took the first exam. We now have over 190,000 charter holders around the world in over 160 countries and over 160 CFA societies. So that growth has been remarkable, and I think that respect the industry has for CFA as a program. But also I hope the knowledge that we've gained along the way to add to the relevance of the credential is something that works symbiotically. From our perspective, we're trying to grow now our portfolio of products, of educational programs. We mentioned earlier on areas like data science, not teaching people to be data scientists.
Correct.
We're trying to make sure that people have enough knowledge of that world so that they can make informed decisions, work with experts, come to the right conclusions on behalf of their customers and on behalf of their organization. So very dynamic time for us, a growth time for us. Is there any area you'd like us to start thinking about as we start to go through the next round of thinking about what's coming around the corner?
Well, I think some of these recent changes are very dynamic and very powerful. And I believe, like you mentioned, maybe something out of the box thinking, like you said, suppose can some kind of soft skill or upskilling in that field be introduced? Or let's say, right now we have introduced certain learnings of financial modeling, coding like Python. Maybe we need to think futuristic, like, that today's young professional, who is doing the CFA program will be in their middle management or peak of the career, let's say 10, 12 years down the line. At that time, what will be the new language which will be available? Maybe Python will be a little bit old that time. So like that, if we constantly keep thinking futuristic, and already it is part of our, the way in which CFA program is conducted, like taking member feedback and everything. So I think it's already set in place. We just need to move forward basically with it. So I think no specific change. Already the changes are very powerful and very dynamic.
There's a very specific question for you here,
Okay.
Neil. You mentioned you're in audit. The question here is, how does the investment management industry view accountants?
See, I think, very good question. It is a very important part of the ecosystem. Today, we rely so much heavily on information which is published by companies and it is audited. So auditors' assurance is very paramount, So I feel that part of the ecosystem of finance professionals is very much, dependent on auditors. So very important part of the ecosystem,
Absolutely. Anything else that you'd like to add at this part of the session before we take a short break?
Well, I think one question from my side, like, Nick, how you are seeing the growth of, investment management industry, like from a global perspective, so that like young professionals can be aligned to that growth,
If I look at the CFA program candidates as perhaps a barometer of the health or not of the industry, which may be a big step, but allow me to take that. I'd say the pandemic definitely slowed things down. It's been a challenge in most markets around the world, and different markets have been recovering at different times. I'm thrilled to say, especially being here today in Mumbai, that in India in particular, we are almost back to our pre-pandemic levels of growth from a CFA program perspective, which is very encouraging. And if you look at other markets around APAC, that's true in some very different places. Vietnam, for instance, is growing very quickly as a consumer of our products. So I think there's a greater understanding about the value investment management brings to healthy capital
Sure,
markets
yeah.
and in turn on society at large.
Sure.
And I think the encouraging signs are there in other areas as well. So, for instance, we just did a survey of graduates and undergraduates, and finance is the number one choice of
Sure,
career
yeah.
for people going through their tertiary education at the moment, which is a change to pre-pandemic levels.
Correct,
So there's a realization, I think, or at least a growing understanding of the value a career in finance can bring, and also the skills and rewards that people need to bring to that and can aspire to. What we are seeing, having said that, is that the world of finance going forward may be slightly different to the world of finance we've known.
Certainly.
So if you look at where our talent's coming from, there's a growing appetite for people from STEM university backgrounds, so science, technology, and so on, engineering and maths, to want to get into the world of finance. Nearly 15% of our candidates now who are at universities come from STEM. I'm wondering if you're seeing that as well.
Yes, certainly. Yeah. And as I gave example, I could not think of the word STEM, but I gave example live, like somebody I know was from a biology background, completely unrelated, and how it helped, So yeah, I mean, certainly, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. And thank you for staying with us in this first part of this session. We're going to take a short break now and then look about how we're responding both at an industry level and also specifically at a CFA Institute level in terms of the support we give people and the education programs that we're developing around that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Thanks, Nick and Anil, for the insightful discussion. Anil and Nick spoke about a lot of things, including accelerating changes, need for upskilling, AI, ML, ESG, and soft skills. We are going to cover some of the same topics, but as Nick talked about, we are going to address how CFA Institute is responding to these changes and these demands from employers. My name is Sivanand Ramachandran. I'm a Director of Capital Markets Policy at the CFA Institute. I am joined by another Nick Bartlett, Senior Head Learning Content at CFA Institute. Hi, Nick, and great to have you at this discussion. We are going to start from the big picture. Can you talk about how CFA Institute updates its curriculum, and can you talk about how it responds to the demands of the employers? Can you talk a bit about the process?
Sure. Thanks, Siva, and nice to be here today. Thanks for the opportunity to talk with you. Two things I'd say in response to that. First of all, we have an education advisory committee who advises us on the direction of our curriculum. For anyone online who's interested in the big picture of how we develop CFA program, we have something called the Candidate Body of Knowledge, which is a high-level framework that determines what should be incorporated into it, and that's something we work on year to year. That advisory body also recommends and advises us on exam weights for the qualification. We then need to get out into the market and to talk with practitioners, and there's two components to this. We work with panels, so we have existing panels, standing panels, such as our ESG panel, who support in the development of the ESG certificate. And we also set up ad hoc panels. So last year, we set up a working panel to focus on private markets. If you're familiar with the developments taking place from the Evolve initiative, you'll know that we're creating some specialized pathways at level 3, and private markets are an important part of that. We need to understand what the market is doing. So that balance of panels combined with surveys as well. And we have a very systematic approach for surveying members and practitioners to understand changes.
I think that's, in the previous session, the speaker spoke about how responding to practitioners and learning from practitioners is a big part of how we update our curriculum. I think it's great that you shared some of the details as to what goes into updating our curriculum. I wanted to ask you, what like if the same process applies to what goes out of curriculum, right? So, or what gets de-emphasized, and can you give us some examples of like, what has gotten like included or what has gotten de-emphasized in recent years?
Yeah. Okay. So there's two parts to this really, because we've had some developments with Evolve, which I'll talk about later on. If we look at our standard process, we refer to this as the Test Specification Task Force. It's a process that we run every few years, which involves a large, significant survey of members. And when we're developing CFA program, we are doing so through a particular lens. And we're looking at what is the competencies that are needed by someone to be foundationally competent in a role. And specifically, we're looking at three roles. We're looking at people who are going into analyst roles, or portfolio management roles, such as investment decision makers, or into private wealth roles. Now, when we have run that process in recent times, the last time we ran that, we ask which of the candidate body of knowledge areas are most important. And interestingly, what we find is that areas like time value of money, which is a principle that was invented in the 1930s by John Burr Williams, continues to be was the top ranking one. Now, I mention that because I know we're going to discuss ESG, I know we're going to discuss data, but I just want to stress that there are foundational competencies to being an investment professional which haven't really changed significantly. When we look then at iterations, what's coming in, what's going out, we've incorporated more on ESG over the last couple of years. Areas we've taken out, there's less focus on defined benefit pension schemes now, as we see more people move towards defined contributions. That is an area we've reduced in focus.
It's interesting, right? So I think time value of money, the compounding, these are foundational principles, isn't it? I think it also kind of goes back to my follow-up comment, right? When I think about this curriculum, there is, when we talk about changes and how we need to keep up with the changes, but there is also an aspect of stability, right? So stability is equally important as changes. I think, it seems as if the fact that time value of money comes up like quite high in the candidate body of knowledge shows that it's, while we respond to market practitioner, it also seems like we value that stability that comes with the curriculum of teaching the most important fundamental concepts to our investment candidates.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And those foundational concepts around valuation, the principles of that haven't changed, but there's complexities around the process, which we'll discuss in a minute.
All right. So I'm going to switch gears and talk about AI and technology. So AI and technology has kind of permeated many professions. Just the other day, I was talking about, I was reading about how AI has permeated the legal profession and how it's impacting it. So there is a concern that technology and AI could upend investment roles, and people who are not, following the recent trends might get fallen behind. What is your view on some of these trends, and how is CFA Institute adapting its offerings to incorporate some of the trends in technology and AI?
Okay. Well, I'd step back a little bit from that, the immediate question, and just think about how we can assess knowledge and skill developments in the profession. Typically, we think of this through a topic lens. If you look at something like CFA program, you think of fixed income, you think of equity investments, we think of economics, we think of topics. Another way of thinking about this, and it's a form of analysis we do, is to look at the activities individuals and practitioners undertake in their day-to-day work. And we spend a lot of time doing this, going out into the marketplace, talking with analysts, talking with portfolio managers. And as many people on the line today will know, there are multiple different job roles emerging. There's a complicated network of different jobs. But if you focus in and try and compartmentalize it, what we see is that there are 5 or 6 main areas. There are people who are doing analytical activities. There are people who are doing investment decision-making activities. There are those working in risk and compliance. There are people working in advisory roles. There are those working in leadership, and so forth. When we look at the underlying activities within those, so take an analyst. What does an analyst do? An analyst probably does some idea generation. They'll do industry and company analysis. They'll do financial modeling. they'll look at their ESG integration into that process. A portfolio manager, investment strategy work, portfolio construction, performance measurement. If you work in business development or say in private wealth, perhaps you're going out looking for clients, you're working in business development, doing client profiling. There isn't one area of those activities that isn't being touched by AI. So AI is affecting the entire workflow. So to your point, I think it was raised in the earlier call around, is this important? It is hugely important. It's hugely important for people coming into the sector. And I think the challenge is, how do you address it as a practitioner? Are you going to go deep into learning about data science and data science techniques? Or are you going to take the route of wanting to be a practicing investment professional and look at how you apply that into your day-to-day activities? There was a second part to your question. I'm sorry I'm going on a bit, but I'm just going to respond to that as well. How are we dealing with that? A couple of years ago, we incorporated machine learning into CFA program. That now makes up part of level 2, the quantitative methods part of the program. We don't look to incorporate everything into CFA program. There are skills which are going parallel to that or beyond CFA program. We've set up a data science certificate for investment professionals as well. And that takes a slightly different approach, which I'm happy to talk about if you'd like me to.
All right. I think what you said about roles and how AI gets incorporated within the workflows kind of resonates with me. So in my previous roles, I used to head up index product development team. So the way we used to work and interact with AI and machine learning was, there was a data science team which was separate, who used to create the data points which was developed using machine learning and data science techniques, and we used to use that in the portfolio construction along with traditional factors, right? So from our perspective, even though we are not specialists and we are not building those models using AI and machine learning, what we needed to do is to understand how those models were being built and question any assumptions behind those models in order to convince ourselves to use those data points within our portfolio construction. So which is a different set of skill sets compared to, like you said, teaching them to be data scientists, right? So as CFAs, like we both are, so we need to have a different set of skill sets. I mean, it is useful to have some coding background, and I'll get back to you on that one. But more importantly, it's about understanding the models and being able to apply those models in the usual investment process, right? So in the daily workflows.
And that's exactly what we're trying to do in the data science certificate. We're looking to provide the knowledge and skills to people who are working as investment professionals, so they can engage with their data science teams, so they understand and develop an intuition for how machine learning models work, and they can then apply them in their workflow.
Excellent. I just want to do a brief segue into ESG. Like AI and technology, ESG is another trend that is reshaping the profession. I know Anil in the previous session talked about, it's not about top down or bottom up anymore. I think investors need to apply an ESG lens within part of their investment process. So I just wanted to get your thoughts around ESG. How are we thinking about ESG, and how should we think investors should consider ESG in their investment analysis?
Okay, so we think about this in a few different ways, and through a couple of different products and the development of those products. We have been developing and delivering a certificate in ESG investing for several years now. That certificate was developed in the UK market, and it came out of engaging with practitioners and understanding what are people putting into their analysis, what do they need to understand. That process of developing a certificate means we need to have an understanding of foundational competencies. What are the foundational competencies required in the domain of ESG? It's very important to understand the context. It's very important to understand the regulatory environment and the development in policies. And it's complicated. There's a huge amount globally and at a national level which are being introduced. It's important to understand the factors, the environmental, the social, the governance factors, to understand materiality and MAC concepts, as well as engagement and stewardship. And then you want to put that into the analysis and valuation process. I spoke to an analyst the other day, works for a large asset manager in London. He has a master's in climate finance, works as an ESG analyst, and he was just articulating to me the challenge, but no one organization does this the same way as another one. So this is an industry which is still finding its feet in terms of how to integrate these considerations. As practitioners, you need to understand the narrative, you need to understand the language around ESG. And then ultimately, you're going to need to take that and put that into your financial models. And we mustn't remove ourselves from the importance of those foundational skills around financial statement analysis, financial modeling. And you're going to need to think, right, how is that revenue line affected by technological developments, changes in consumer preferences, and so forth. So it's really important. We've got the ESG certificate, we've integrated and made significant developments to the CFA program and the number of readings, and it's an area we continue to research.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned that there is no one way to apply ESG in your investment process. I was reminded of a recent article which Ashwath Damodaran wrote about NVIDIA's valuation. I mean, the valuation details are interesting, but I was struck by the initial description he said. He said he invested in NVIDIA a few years back, but he didn't have a speck of imagination that AI is going to be the driver of its value till this year, right? And to his credit, he applied how AI could impact the valuation, whether the current valuations is supported by fundamentals and so on, right? So if we take the same analogy to ESG, what was immaterial potentially a few years back becomes material today, in which case I think it's important for analysts to consider those factors in their investment process and have a sound basis for valuation. A lot of people ask us question, how do you apply ESG in investment process? My sense is it's not very different from how you apply any big driver, whether it's ESG or AI, in their investment process. We teach the tools of how to apply and incorporate that information, but to what you said, there is not one way to incorporate that information.
Right? Yeah, and I just make one final point. When we were involved in the developments for ESG certificate several years ago, I remember talking to someone about it, and he was an investment manager, and he said, this is really just good investment analysis. And it goes a little bit beyond that. There's a discussion around value and values, but in essence, that's what we're trying to do.
All right, so we are getting some audience questions. So what technology skill would you advise a person trying to break into investment management industry? Or what kind of skill sets in technology does an investment professional need to get a toehold in the industry? Do you have any initial thoughts?
Yeah, so I suppose there's different angles to this. So there's different roles around technology. For those who are involved in the investment process, some may choose to go down more of a data scientist role. So we have a lot of data scientist teams that sit alongside investment teams, dealing with specific challenges. There are others who want to go down a more quantitative approach, perhaps, become quantitative analysts, maybe working at a hedge fund. As an anecdotal example, my brother-in-law is a coder. He was actually a physicist. He's become a investment practitioner. He codes in R, and he is doing a lot of back testing and simulation to assess future rules and investment processes. Again, it comes back a little bit to that question earlier of how deep do you want to get into this area? There's lots of data science courses out there. We are not offering data science courses per se. What we are looking to do is to provide candidates with the ability to integrate these skills into the investment process.
So I just had one thought around this question around which technology skill sets to use. I think the evolution of generative AI has afforded investment professionals the ability to become coders with medium skill sets. You can never become an expert just by asking ChatGPT to write a sample code for you, but it has allowed a vast majority of investment professionals to kind of ask a question. And I have done this very recently myself, when we were munging some ESG data, and we wanted to use R and asked ChatGPT to say that, can you give me a sample code for extracting information from XBRL, right? So and then it gave me a sample code, and and then you can build on it, right? So I think it's really exciting.
And I think if we get the chance, maybe we can put it in the link. We had a presentation last week on the data science certificate, and we were speaking to some machine learning experts. And if we can put that recording in, because there was a very interesting snippet in there from the machine learning expert at an asset manager about how he's applying that into coding activities.
Excellent. I just wanted to touch upon this concept of soft skills. I think soft skills came up in the previous discussions. I think employers clearly not only just looking for technical knowledge and skill sets, but they are also looking for soft skills, even how they come across in the interview, right? So I think it makes a big difference regardless of what the resume says, right? So can you talk about some of our work in this area and some of your thoughts around based on all the conversations you have with your practitioners?
So it's hugely important.
Yep.
And we've talked a lot today about these two mega trends of ESG and data. I was out about 4 days ago at an event, evening event, and I saw our head of business development, and I said to him, "What are you hearing?" And I read the call notes which come in from firms. "What are you hearing?" He said, "Nick, it's all about soft skills." Yeah. And I thought I was going to get something juicy on data or on climate, but he said it's all about soft skills. And this is a repeated trend. In 2021, we did extensive research globally on competencies needed by investment practitioners. We looked at the range of activities that different roles undertake, and we developed out a framework for soft skills. Now, we came up with 6. I just highlight 3 today. We've talked a lot about the role of the investment professional, and we've talked about not necessarily needing to be a data scientist or be a sustainability expert. But as an investment professional, you are going to need to work with the data scientist teams. You are going to want to work with the ESG and sustainability teams. Collaboration, and there's 3 big C's we have. Collaboration was one of those big 3. So being able to engage, being able to work with people, being able to leverage their skills. Communication, so the ability to present, the ability to listen, the ability to communicate across cultures. And I'd echo what was said by Nick and Anil earlier, just around developing those skills. You may not be working in the investment profession today, but any chance you get to develop your presentation ability. And finally, curiosity. And the likes of Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett talk about this, but constantly thinking, what are the connections? How do things connect? What's out there? Asking the right questions.
I think curiosity is fundamental to learning, right? I would imagine that anyone who takes up the program like the CFA, right, it's a multi-year process, right? So you need to be curious about the investment profession to the first place to actually enroll into a program, right, with that level of commitment which is needed. I just wanted to, we are coming towards the end of the session. I just wanted to, bring it all together, right? So can you talk about how CFA Institute is broadly evolving its curriculum? Can you talk about some of the changes that we have introduced in this regard?
So we have our standardized approach. We talked about this a little bit earlier, this test specification approach. We talked about how we are making iterations on defined benefit schemes and on ESG. We've also had some significant developments with the Evolve project, which has just gone live for level 1 and will go live for level 3 next year. I'll just highlight 3 main areas to this. 1, we're looking to make significant enhancements to the instructional design of the curriculum. We're very much focused on knowledge with purpose. What we convey to candidates, we want it to be engaging. We want it to connect in with the real world so you can see how it applies to the activities you're doing day to day. At level 3, we're creating specialized pathways. So many of you on the call will know there's significant developments taking place in private markets, and we're creating 3 specialized pathways. So level 3 candidates, 70% of what they all do will be consistent, will be core curriculum, but then candidates will have a choice of whether to go down a private markets pathway, a private wealth pathway, or a portfolio management pathway. That's significant development for us, and it reflects again the demand from analysts and managers in the market. And finally, we've introduced practical skills modules. I think these are a tremendous innovation. Anyone now who's doing level 1 or level 2, and over the next couple of years also level 3, will have a requirement to complete a practical skills module. Those people doing level 1 currently are required to complete something either on financial modeling or on Python. And if you're really keen, you can actually do both. But they're great. They're a great opportunity to apply, do code, write the code, be instructed through that process, and similarly, fantastic course on financial modeling, so you can build your skills in that domain.
Excellent. I think the points about practical skills modules and whether it's financial modeling or Python like are really goes back to, in addition to the soft skills, making sure that candidates are kind of ready, right, job ready when they are applying to this thing. Because my next question from the audience is about, what is the, considering the challenge of limited work experience for many candidates when they, like, especially in our country, India, where many CFA candidates are younger than global average. So the question is, in your view, like, what is one skill which you consider absolutely future-proof as a skill?
Okay. I think, I could go back to the curiosity and the communication, but there's something about motivation and drive. I've read various things, I've studied in some of these areas in the past. There's something about sort of not saying no to opportunities and just saying yes, getting yourself involved, whether it's in the investment profession, whether it means volunteering, whether it means contributing time to your local society or working outside of the society to build your skills. And I think just keep learning, and with that drive and opportunity, and ultimately sort of go about your work in a good way, an ethical way, a trustworthy way, be someone that people like working with. That's also in the competency framework, although we didn't talk about it earlier.
So actually, since you're talking about saying yes, right, I think maybe it depends on age, right? So when you're younger, I think it pays to kind of say yes to many things, to kind of figure out what your pathway is. I suppose as you get older, I suppose it's about saying no and trying to focus on a few things, right? It could be an age-related thing, because I've heard virtues of saying yes and I've heard virtues of saying no. So I don't know what the good answer is. Maybe it's age-related. So, but in addition to this, I guess what I wanted to highlight, and like, we are coming to the end of this session, is an initiative that we are piloting in India. So what we are trying to do is we are putting together a program for our candidates in India, so which we are piloting, like, we'll announce in a few months, which is a mix of soft skills and application related skills, so to help candidates become like more ready when they face interviews, right? So the details will come soon, but we do think that in some markets, especially India, where the candidate profile is younger and candidates are looking not just to increase their skills, but potentially get a toehold in the investment industry, we think an initiative like this is absolutely essential. I know that you talked about the 3 C's, the collaboration, curiosity, and I always forget the last one.
Communication.
Communication. Okay. when you say 3 things, I forget the third one. When you say 4 things, I forget the 4th. I'm sorry. So I think it's absolutely essential, and we think that an initiative like this complements the work that we do with our hard skills as well. So with that, I wanted to thank you, Nick, and thank everyone who listened to this session patiently, came up with good questions, and I hope you find it useful.
Great.